All right. So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the April meeting of the BSA's Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Network. Please note that today's meeting will be recorded and shared on the BSA's website as a resource. Please use the chat function if you have any questions or comments during the presentation. Today's presentation will focus on equity and honors and awards. And before we get started, I put a link in the chat to a short multiple choice survey that we'll be using to structure today's conversation. If you've yet to respond to the survey, we encourage you to do so now, as we'll be showing the live results later in the session. So if you do it now, you'll be included in the responses that we review. So for our agenda today, we'll give a short intro to who we are as the EDI network at the BSA, an intro to the topic of honors and awards. We'll hand it over to Patricia from the BSA to give us a brief intro to what this new BSA Honors and Awards Advisory Group is doing. And then we'll review the survey results I just mentioned and conduct a community forum to solicit responses from you all. So at the BSA, we believe equity, diversity, and inclusion are fundamental values which must be fostered throughout our organization, the profession, our workplaces, and communities. We strive to cultivate a sense of safety and belonging for all individuals while creating an atmosphere of deep collaboration that cuts across demographic and hierarchical lines. This knowledge community's goal is to reinforce those values. Last year, our knowledge community published a resource guide for the BSA members and member firms as an entry point to utilizing the AIA Guide for Equitable Practice. This guide can be found on the BSA's website under the EDI page. In addition, we just wanted to call everyone's attention to other EDI resources that we've gathered as part of our knowledge community for our members, including example firm policies that address EDI issues and video archives of each of our previous sessions, which go through all the AIA Guide for Equitable Practice. These can also be found on the BSA website under the EDI page. And if you have any questions on these resources, please feel free to reach out to me or one of the other co-chairs. So we like to start every session with the ground rules for conversations. So we would ask that you all keep one goal top of mind, which is to listen to be changed rather than to listen to be reinforced. It's easy to clearly point out your view on an issue, but it's hard to open yourself up to listening to perspectives that differ from your own. So we hope that everyone can join this conversation with an open mind. So as we dive into the topic, I'd like to introduce you all to the moderators. So I'm Dan Riccadelli. I'm an architect at Paris Street, and I'll be moderating along with Josh Softy, who's a principal at KMA Architecture and Accessibility. With that, I'll hand it over to Josh to give the topic intro.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. So as the slide says, the goal of this session is to solicit feedback from the BSA broadly on how to increase equity in the BSA Design Awards. This is a topic that sort of bubbled up from conversations within the EDI network and outside of it as well. Conversations that I personally have had with colleagues and friends for quite a long time, even dating back to before EDI became such a topic of focus within the BSA. Can you change slides, Dan? And the questions that I've been hearing, that Dan and Tony have been hearing within the EDI network are pretty broad ranging. They certainly address what kind of architecture are we hoping to recognize through honors and awards, but also who makes the decisions, who submits for the honors and awards to begin with, and what are the criteria for them, right? How do we define beauty? How do we define design excellence, right? And so, these are not easy questions to answer, and they're all interrelated in many ways. And so part of the reason for the session today was to try to fine tune the conversation a little bit. And at the same time, as Dan, Tony and I were, and Rachel Zembury were talking about these issues, we learned in reaching out to colleagues such as Patricia that the BSA independently was also sort of convening this advisory group to look at honors and awards as well. Not specifically with the goal of improving around issues of EDI, but even more broadly. And so we saw this as an opportunity to keep asking these questions, but as I said, in a more refined way, and then to allow this to be information that can be channeled into the advisory group. And so next slide, please, Dan. The questions that we've tried to narrow it down to, which are two of the questions in the survey, if you've had a chance to complete it. And for those of you who joined, there is a survey in the chat. There's a link to a survey in the chat. And we're going to be sharing the results, live results. And so if you have a chance to answer the 5 questions now, your results will be included in the conversation. The 2 big questions we've tried to narrow this down to is what's the biggest barrier to more diverse participation in the design awards? And then what's the most impactful way to make these same awards more equitable? Sorry, I'll do the handoff. And so Patricia's going to talk to us for a minute about the advisory group that both Dan and I mentioned a minute ago.
Great, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. So as you all know, or many of you know, last year was the first year that we introduced the AIA framework for design excellence into all the design award categories. And we received a lot of feedback, on both sides, for better, for worse. But overall, I think there are just so many questions where there should always be questions, but there's ways we can improve upon the awards. So next slide. We convened a group of members just to comprised of different experience. Josh is involved, Kate Murphy, representatives from Coat, mid-size, small-size firms, past jurors, past award winners, to get their feedback on what are the challenges around the submission process. Are there barriers? We know that awards, projects, awards, there's no one size fits all, but we're just trying to look to see how do we make this more equitable and more impactful for everyone, and to improve certainly the efficiency around with the framework, which I think a lot of people have challenges with. So the advisory group has just started convening, just going broadly, what do the design awards mean? We have to move beyond a beautiful portfolio and to focus more on to convey what the role of the architect is. We need to change the conversation about how we talk about architecture and share its impact. So we're just starting these conversations. I think overall, the framework is very important. And so the BSA right now is looking at ways as to how to incorporate that into the awards to make it more efficient and accessible for everyone, but still have a mission-focused program. So the awards, the 2022 awards, will be launching within May, maybe in conjunction with our postponed Design Awards celebration, which is May 19th. So stay tuned for that. But I'm happy to talk to anyone and everyone about the Design Awards program, any issues people have had. Happy to hear your recommendations for that. So stay tuned. But also, I know that Mark Rikmatu is on the call as well. So I work with him also on the Honors and Awards Committee. And looking into equity and inclusion is a big topic of this committee. And we're looking at ways, how do we broaden our reach? So it's not just the familiar same faces in the neighborhood that get nominated year after year. So awards programs are ever evolving, as they should be. So feel free to, great, Elizabeth and Reagan are here as well, so they could chime in on that. So I just want to give you a little update on the Design Awards, so stay tuned.
Thank you so much, Patricia. That's a great jumping off point into the survey results. And we certainly, if any of the Honors and Awards group want to chime in anywhere, please let us know. So I think it's, it's great to just use this data that we collected as a sort of jumping off point for the discussion today. Great. So we received 20 responses. And I hope everyone can see this clearly enough. We zoomed in. So the first two questions were really qualifiers. In which capacity have you participated in the Design Awards in the past? So as you can see, half the participants in the survey participated as an applicant or part of the applicant team, and the other half were either staff members or jurors, or no, I have not. I guess a quarter is no, I have not. And the second kind of qualifying question was, did you know that the BSA has adopted the new AI framework for design excellence as part of the Design Awards? As you can see, the answer is that more than half of people did not know that that was the case, and 15% of people don't know what that is. So, admittedly, having just started engaging in this conversation, I had to look it up myself prior to starting this topic about a month ago. So those were the two qualifying questions. And then we get into the meat of our conversation today, and we welcome you all to unmute and speak up as you feel fit. But these two questions were the ones we wanted to focus our conversation on. So the first is, what do you feel the biggest barrier to more diverse participation in Design Awards is? And I can hover over the results here, but 47% said it's extensive and onerous submission requirements. 20% or 21% said perception that this type of recognition isn't important. 10% said the lack of clarity in award criteria. And then the rest, I think, were actually write-in responses. So the notion that established or novel, well-funded artistic firms will win, lack of diverse participation in design, and the same firms are always recognized. So it's actually longer than that, and I won't read most of it. And then for the second question, what do you feel will be the most impactful way to make the BSA Awards more equitable? 30% of people responded that it's about more explicit EDI criteria. 25% said more diverse juries, and 15% said elimination of barriers to entry. And then the other responses were, I'll just go through: rebranding of awards values, create awards for individuals. Oh, this is both B and C, so explicit award criteria and elimination of barriers. Same here. And then all of the above. And one for modified award categories. So
Sorry,
I'll
what was the
stop there
last
and
thing you said?
modified award categories. So I'll stop there and open it up to everyone for discussion, and I'm happy to navigate around the screen as you all like and reread things.
I'll jump in.
Go ahead, Leslie, please.
I'm the one who wrote perhaps an individual award category, because what I'm thinking is that if we could have an EPNet emerging EDI or BIPOC category where people, and maybe there's two, one for whites and one for, or allies, I'd say, one for allies and one for BIPOC applicants, these emerging professionals who are just getting registered or working in the field. And it seems to me that if we want firms to recognize them, it's a way for them to realize they should be encouraging their employees. And if they don't have any employees in that category, that should tell them that they need to get them. And then help them be recognized and promoted with that kind of support of like an award winner. Wow, like this person deserves more than just being seen as one of the many young people. I've had the privilege, EPNet gave me 5 mentees this year, and a couple have used me more, but we had a lot of group sessions that they really enjoyed. And I feel like some of them, the young ones, ambitious, capable, working hard, and they feel very frustrated about, I'm sure, with everything going on. And it'd be wonderful to say, like, we're recognizing you. So I feel like beyond just social issues that are ignored on design awards, which is another category I know you already mentioned, but I feel like that's a way to give us the pipeline. We'll continue to win awards.
I wonder if anybody from the honors and awards group that's on this call would like to comment or respond to Leslie a little bit, because the way that we learned during structuring this event that it's kind of set up is that the design awards are for firms and kind of looped in with this criteria from the BSA. And then the honors and awards committee deals with individual awards. And I think, unless I'm misquoting, I think that's how it's set up. So I wonder if anybody would like to kind of take that on.
I mean, I could jump in. I'm new to the Honors Awards Committee this year. I don't know if Elizabeth or Reagan, since you all are the co-chairs, you want to say something first, then I can follow up.
Yeah, I can take this. So the Honors and Awards Committee is kind of a set up to do 2 things, right? So one thing we do is recommend people who we think should apply for the national AIA awards, like the Gold Medal Award, the Firm Award, the Excellence in Public Architecture Award. And that's kind of an informal process where we essentially send a letter to someone saying, hey, we think you should apply for this. And it's on them to do the process of application. And then we are also the group that awards 3 of the, well, I guess 3 awards that are given by the BSA, the Award of Excellence, I'm blanking on them right now, the Firm Award.
The Award of Honor, the BSA Commonwealth Award, and the Honorary Membership Award.
Thank you, Regan. And the Flansberg Award for
Flansberg.
Young Architects. And so we're a little bit sideways of the kind of things like the Harleston Parker, which are more purely design awards, I think, than what we're looking at, although design is clearly a part of what we're looking at. And I think the Harleston Parker is the only one that has a formal application process.
Actually, Harleston Parker is.
I mean, not Harleston Parker.
Yeah,
Flansberg is what I meant to say. Flansberg is the only one that has a formal application process. But I would say, I was just going to say, I think these issues that are being raised in this meeting are things that we've talked a lot about over the 3 years I've been on the committee. And I think Mark has made some interesting suggestions about how to start addressing them this year.
Yeah, and I can jump in real quick as the new person on the committee, and I also have to apologize. I have to run at 12:30. I have another thing, so I'll just say something before I have to split here. But for some of the, I think, individual awards, Young Architect Award, things like that as well. I don't know that the BSA internally has those. I mean, that's AIA National has those, and we don't necessarily review those. Those are something that people are either nominated by someone or they self-nominate, and then the BSA supports them for that application to those awards. So I think, Leslie, the thing you're talking about there would be something that the BSA would have to kind of create as an award category at a local level, perhaps, that might be able to support people in a variety of ways. And, and then, the question about, the different kind of groups of that award. I mean, I don't know, I have mixed feelings about that because I feel like it's both good to recognize the different sort of, groups that we have within our profession, but also when we start to separate them out, we're also creating division within that. So I feel like the kind of awards that we have should recognize everybody, not just, the kind of old guard within the profession in some ways. But I do recognize that to kind of get the new groups in, sometimes you have to create these kind of things as well to support that. I think I would like to have, for me personally, I would like to have more discussions with those groups of people rather than, me as somebody from my particular background, my particular, ethnic and racial and, gender kind of grouping that I have, to not sort of think about what I think other people should have, but bring those groups together as have a conversation and decide what the best path of that moving forward would be.
I think it's an interesting observation, Mark, and I might be making a stretch here, but it in some ways parallels some conversations that we had at the last advisory group meeting, where and just for folks who I don't know and who don't know me, so our firm does only accessibility and universal design, right? So we have this particular entry into greater conversations about equity and inclusion, but during the last advisory group meeting, the question was asked, should we even have sustainability awards? Should we even have accessible design awards, right? Why are we calling those out when they should just be part of everything that we do, right? And so this is where I'm saying it's a related conversation, I think, to what you're saying about, do we create separate awards for young BIPOC architects, or do we just work harder to, get those young BIPOC architects access to the same opportunities, right?
Right,
so I think
they may not know about Flansberg, and they may not know about, but I think a local award that encourages the young emerging professionals. And I just look at Boston, excuse me for saying one more thing, which is I'm also a member of AIA Miami, and AIA Miami, Crew Miami, and NOMA. I sponsored an event down there, and obviously it's Miami is a more diverse city, but there were 3 white people. It was amazing. And so, and the energy and comfort, and, you feel included and belonging when everybody looks like you in the room. And I just feel like if we need to set our, somehow, maybe it's not an award, but I'm feeling like that's a path to get more attention, to encourage people, firms to hire people who don't.
Deborah.
Yeah.
I see Deborah's hand. Sorry. Why don't we? I realized Dan and I didn't establish this, so why don't we use the hand raising function, and I'll nominate myself as the official hand observer, just to keep things smooth. Deborah, go ahead.
Hi. I'm sort of coming from this from a bit of an outsider because I'm a British architect, not an American architect, but I work here. But looking at your website, every single project is very expensive. It's got a professional photographer. This is the awards website you've got up here. And one of the biggest thing about diversity is the lack of access to money. So if you're actually asking people to have professional photographs to submit their projects, and their projects these are all very, very well financed projects that are winning awards, this may be one of the barriers to actually getting more people to actually submit projects and it's so the bar is so high. And money, we're having projects that don't cost a lot of money or don't cost millions of dollars, just aiming at that level will encourage more people to come in. I mean, what about the pop-up award, for people who do pop-ups, which is a way that a lot of firms sort of start getting into practice. So I don't know, this is just my idea.
Deborah, I just to respond to you a bit, we agree, and we've talked about this a little bit, and not just the scale and the amount of money, the budget of the actual project, but the amount of money and time it takes to submit for a project is exponential. And Josh and I, in our discussions leading up to this event, spoke with some members of smaller firms who don't have a marketing department, who can manage that process. And just the amount of time it would take for a small firm to dedicate the resources and time to submit can be prohibitive for them as well. So I think it's a great point.
So I'm going to do this to try and keep conversation going. I saw Jay's hand come up during Deborah, while Deborah was speaking. Jay, I wondered if you had something to say specifically to that, then why don't you go ahead? And then Stephanie, I see you, and I'll come to you next.
Sure. So I completely agree with Deborah's observations from the perspective of a millennial who is pursuing licensure. Like, it's a very systemic issue with the level of cost, the cost to become an AIM member, the cost to retain your NCARB record. And on top of that, if you want to gain, I suppose the answer I'm trying to seek is, what's the overall goal of being a person who receives an award? It could be clout, but is it also showing the rest of the design world, this is what can be done and what should be like achievable and striving to become? And I'm going to throw out a lot of things that I'm thinking and all that, and I don't necessarily have answers to them or mostly coherent thoughts towards them. But even just, I see the merit in saying, well, why do we need an accessibility category? But there are underserved members. Like, even if you have, for instance, I'm non-binary, and approaching dorm design, for instance, for folks who are trans and non-binary, what if that's a category in its own, and showing, oh, hey, I never thought about that. Let's try to design something for it. And maybe it isn't built yet, but what if it could be built? Or showing how we can modify an existing building that needed to be built this way. So I think there's some merit in having specific categories that show a myriad of ways to address one situation. But I also understand, well, we should be doing this already. Problem is, we're not. So there needs to be attention drawn to this through the awards system. And like I said, I think it's defining what the awards goal is, if that makes sense.
Thanks, Jay. Stephanie, why don't I come back to you?
I think this is a really interesting conversation, and mostly because I've been around so long. In my lifetime, the process of awards was always visual. And it goes to the photography issue, but it's sort of like, even if you have a terrible project and it photographs well, you might win an award. So it all comes back to the photograph. What I'm finding about these unique projects right now is it's all about the narrative. And sometimes the written work is so informative, so didactic, so you're able to learn so much from the writing that goes with the imagery. And as architects, I've been on these juries and I flip through the book and I'm looking, it's like architecture porn, it's like, oh, I love this. I love this. But if you actually read some of the narratives of all the projects, you start to understand things very differently. And I'm just curious that how the writing and the imagery in the submission requirements it might feather into this conversation as well. Instead of trying to make all these micro categories, which I think would be kind of onerous, maybe it is somewhere between the writing and the categories that we find places to emerge different voices. But I do, because we're such a visual profession, we gravitate to the photos or the diagrams, but it doesn't give us a chance to read the uniqueness or the solutions or the costs that went into the project. And so for me, it's always been that challenge of the two.
Do you have more results to show us, or?
No, this was it for results, and oh, I'm sorry. Well, I guess we did ask at the end just if there are other topics that we would like to discuss, and so this was just a write-in answer. So I hope everyone is able to read this.
I wonder if it's possible for some of these big firms with big marketing departments to mentor small firms and help them. Maybe we can pair up small with big and get some training. I mean, we always talk about that in EDI, like we need the training to get the opportunities. We on both ends, understand each other.
I see Calvin has their hand up.
Hi, thank you, Josh. I had a comment that was actually similar to Jay's, and I think I'm struggling to understand the big picture of the Honors and Awards Committee. I think one can make the assumption that honors and awards are to celebrate an accomplishment, but I really think that a decision needs to be made. Are honors and awards meant to bolster certain individuals in their careers and what they're able to accomplish and access to opportunities, or even firms? Or is the point different? Is the point to celebrate the direction that we think the profession should be going in? And I think that both of those things require different strategies. And I've heard people kind of tangentially talk about both of those things in this conversation. And I'm wondering if, BSA honors and awards and our committees that are, devoted to this have made a decision on which one is sort of the point, or both is the point. Which tools are you using to accomplish which one? Because I kind of also have the same question. If the awards are for individuals, like what is it going to give the individual? Is it simply clout? Is it money so you can spend that money on licensure? Are these things so important that they're necessary for promotions? All of that makes sense. Or is it simply we are celebrating this person, this firm, because they are doing something that reflects where we want the profession to go? And I think personally, I think that is a very powerful sort of aspiration to have. Yeah.
So Calvin, this is Josh. I mean, I think I can answer part of that, and I'd welcome others to jump in as well. I would say that in the context of the conversations that Dan and I have had with, various people at the BSA, and in the context of the conversations that the advisory group has had, I think the conversations are really focused on the honors and awards, the design awards, like let's call them the building awards as opposed to the people awards, right? To simplify, the building awards are really an opportunity for the BSA to say, this is what we value in our profession, right? This is what architects are supposed to do for the town, for the city, for the country, for the world, right? And so I think that even the questions that Dan and I tried to put together for this survey, I think they exhibit that bias, right? I don't feel like I can answer as clearly for the work that that Regan and Elizabeth are doing with what I just called the people awards. We just haven't been as much involved in that conversation. We checked in with them early, but sort of came to understand that in some ways they are two different undertakings. And the conversation that we've been trying to have has been about the building awards, so to speak.
I see. Thank you for clarifying that. I will just add, I feel like architects, we're very selfless people. And, we're always concerned with what we're doing for the public, which I think is our primary duty. And I love that. But I am also sort of interested in what we are celebrating, for ourselves. Maybe we're celebrating projects that everyone that worked on them got paid. We're celebrating, a lack of overtime hours, or just like good funding, just things where it's like we are also taking care of ourselves and not just everyone else, to make our profession more sustainable. So I understand you're saying these are two different categories, but I really am just looking for what's the design award that actually celebrates a sustainable profession for the people that are in it.
If I could just add one comment about the People Awards, which is, what the Honors and Awards Committee typically oversees. And I will say it's something that we have been struggling with more lately. There's a very clear defined set of criteria that is attached to each of the awards. And we've found lately that it's hard to just pick one person, because we know that collaboration is such an important part of what we do. And we've really honestly been struggling with that a lot lately. How do you just pick one person when we know that there's so many people behind that person, that sort of brought them to where they are? We don't have a solution yet, but it is an active conversation that we've been having, related to these People Awards. And I don't know if eventually we'll start to see some changes in the criteria, because I think the profession is moving from sort of that one name on the door, that takes all the credit for everything. So just kind of adding where we are struggling with some components of the awards as well.
Works.
Thanks, Regan. It looks like Jay put their hand back down. We have probably 7 or so minutes to keep the conversation going. So I encourage anyone who's been sitting on a thought to share it. This is the first dreaded pause, Dan, that we were.
Yes, that's right.
Wondering.
Well, I was going to say something, but I don't want to dominate the conversation. But just to respond to what Jay and Calvin had mentioned, I love the idea that at least the individual awards are just to celebrate and like honor and celebrate and recognize that you've been doing great work. And it's just, how to make sure that those awards are being given to people from diverse backgrounds that are doing not the same type of work all the time. So, I love that framing of it. Like, what's the point? The point is you're doing great, and we want to just celebrate as a design community together.
And maybe it is a team, maybe it should be a team award.
Deborah, I see you have your hand up.
Hi, yeah, I wanted to go back to one of the things in your previous slides where you were talking about maybe reorientating the awards towards solving problems or something rather than actual building types. Is that right? So that you actually make them a bit less defined. And it also promotes that you're solving problems. Like one of the things I don't see is like transportation, which is a key problem in Boston. Like, and transportation could be active travel. It could be, you know, redesigning, you know, a subway station or something. It can be, it has a broad category, which could encourage people from all, you know, all different sort of people to submit different solutions to a problem that the city or the metro area has. The same thing, I mean, the other thing we should be doing now is, I know this sort of contradicts with Preservation Massachusetts, but we should be refurbishing buildings and promoting refurbishment and adaptive reuse of buildings, but there isn't, I don't think there's a specific award for that. And that can be a small thing as well as, you know, a large project. I think, you know, that's that. So I thought that was a good idea you had earlier. I'm not sure where it is, but yeah.
It's back a few slides, Dan.
Right.
Of course, I'll have trouble finding that, but maybe it was this one.
Jay.
Sorry, I put my hand down before because I was like, I don't know if this is a question worth asking, but I'm just going to throw it out there. So this is me being very uneducated on who wins each year, but is it an issue where the same firms are winning year after year, as you mentioned? Is there a way, and I don't even know if this is a good idea or not, but is there like a rolling clock? After you win one award, you have to wait 1 or 2 years to apply again? And I have no idea if that will decrease participation, if that will inhibit anybody from, I really could see pros and cons to this. So I just wanted to throw that out there, and I have no idea what would come of that.
For the design awards, no. Anyone may submit year after year. They may submit in all the categories. We have rotating categories. They can submit to all the categories if that fits, and then the following year they can also submit. So that is an issue of, you know, I mean, it could be a great project. And should someone be penalized for, you know, trying to share out the project, the impact too many times? How many is too many times? Or, you know, I think there could be better defined criteria over the submissions and also the jurying process.
If I may interject, even though I didn't put my hand up, this is Tony Ransom. I'm one of the co-chairs for EDI. And I've always, you know, I've been thinking about, you know, as I guess it says, what do we value in the profession? And how are those firms performing as architects? You know, I'm thinking about criteria. I mean, yes, a project should excite the soul, okay? But there should be criteria points about how sustainable it is. Does it have a low impact on the environment, which we should all be focusing on with all these new buildings we're creating? Does it increase or improve accessibility? we have to look at, as I think, sometimes the criteria by which we're going to judge the building. Not how pretty it is, but does it meet several points that we need to be dealing with as architects if we intend to help sustain ourselves? And that's something we have to determine what those criteria should be and lay that out there, you know, and maybe, like I said, 2 categories, new and renovation. And how are we all adjusting to that? So I guess there's still a lot of questions as to how we should shape a competition, how we should shape that criteria. And I think that's what we need to be looking at above all else. We're all architects, we're all trying to improve the environment. And it's a question of how are we all performing in improving that environment? That's, I think, part of the main things about that criteria.
I think that's a good point, Tony. And I just thought I'm just taking over screen sharing for a minute, but I think that so this is the IAA framework for design excellence, which half of the respondents said they weren't familiar with, and I think that that does speak to some of the points that you were just making, right? So I think it's always hard to describe. It's hard to capture everything that we want architecture to do, right, within 10 3-word phrases. And so where does accessibility fit in? Does it fit in with well-being? Does it fit in with change? Does it fit in with equitable communities? Does it fit in with integration, right? It's some of all those places. But but I think that we've sort of perceived that that's the direction that the BSA was trying to go with the adoption of the AAA framework for design excellence.
But it becomes onerous if you have to respond to every one of those criteria.
Yeah, and one of the
Especially
conversations that we had with the last advisory group meeting was, do you weight them all equally, or there are awards programs out there that have commendations for certain things, right? So let's take Deborah's idea of there should be a transit award. There should be a transit category. Do you have commendations for accessibility within the transit award category, or that as a way of elevating certain points? So you don't have to hit all 10. You hope to hit on 3 or 4 of them.
Because every project still is a response to your client's requirements. And maybe out of those 10, there may be 6 that your client would like you to have addressed. Like I said, you can't always address all of these in all projects, because all projects don't need all of these. But if you are addressing your client's requirements and you create something that truly excites the soul but hits all those points, yes, that's a good rationale for submission. And we get to look at the client wanted blah, 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 and we resolve those issues these ways in creating this exciting edifice. So, that's a good rationale. You can't hit them all. That's just generally not possible, but you can hit as many as is necessary for the project that you're creating. And that should be part of the criteria. But how well you did as an architect, it's kind of like going back to the old design exam. We have all these parameters you have to hit. Did you hit them? If you didn't, well, you didn't get licensed. But you try to hit all the parameters that your client requests and do it in a way that still, as I think, excites the soul.
Tony, maybe that's, I'm just going to jump in. Maybe that's a good point to skip to our wrap up slides, just so that we're done by 1, so everyone can get back.
Do we have a renovation award? Is there an award for renovation?
No, there is not a renovation award. The BSA, I know we've talked about that over the years, not to conflict or compete with other organizations. Should that still be the case? That's
Deb, I
TBD.
didn't know that. Thank you, Deb Bentley, because I didn't even think about it.
Tony, I'm going to hand it up to you. Just give the
Okay.
update first. What's next?
What's next? Well, of course, we're going to be continuing to discuss this topic, and I think it'd be useful to send in your ideas that we can pass along as to how we can reshape the let's say even the criteria for how we should be addressing projects for awards. But moving on from there, there's some upcoming things that we like to always pass on to you about what's going on. And the EDI network is going to be working with Noma to basically monitor a tour of the Now What exhibit, which is currently at the BSA space. Basically, this exhibit honors change makers of all types in the profession that have helped shape where we are today and give us all some background of how to proceed going forward. So this is going to occur. The exhibit currently is at the space, but on 12th of May at 6, we're inviting everyone to join EDI Network and Noma in touring that exhibition. On the same page is the EDI Network Book Club. I anticipate there will be another meeting at the end of I think it's the 4th Friday of every month. I'm expecting one in April. I don't have an agenda that I know of yet, but I assume if there's going to be a meeting, it will show up in the BSA calendar. So please look for that coming forward. Also on the 4th Tuesday of the month, I think this time April 26th, the Boston chapter of the National Organization of Minority Architects has its monthly meeting. Please contact the BSA or go through their Noma or go through the BSA calendar to sign up so you can be given the Zoom link for that meeting. We wish to thank you once again for participating in our events. This is, like I said, a different subject we haven't covered before, but I think that a number of people really have interest in how we go about looking at awards. We're not looking so much at the how each person submitting what their agendas are, so much as what we think maybe the profession should be promoting moving forward as far as how we perform in producing the buildings that we think will better serve our communities. Thank you very much. If you would like to reach any of us, our email addresses are available. And we do hope that you will join us again next month.
Thank you everyone who participated. Patricia is gonna take some of this. We'll forward all the comments and information to her, and she'll take this back to the advisory group. So hopefully it will be baked into the next round of changes with the BSA Design Awards. And thank you all again.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Take care.
Bye.